Hello, everyone, and welcome to an episode of the Financial Advisors Want to Know podcast. I'm Catherine Tindall, a CPA here with Dominion. We're a specialty tax and accounting firm for financial advisors. And on today's episode, I have James Pollard. I've been following him for quite some time because in my when I'm not doing tax returns, I'm really interested in things like marketing, practice management, those sorts of topics, and have been particularly impressed with the work that James does, especially for advisors. He's the host of the Financial Advisor Marketing Podcast, which has more than 250 episodes. So I've got some catching up to do on my side. He's designed to help financial advisors get more clients. He's also the founder of the advisorcoach.com, which has a plethora of resources for advisors. And he's been helping advisors build better businesses since 2015. And today we're just going to have a conversation about marketing. Particularly, let's start on email marketing, because that's something that I think everybody is interested in and maybe a little bit more, initially accessible. And then we can get into some of the nuance on, copywriting and actually like, how do you make the content good? But yeah, so thanks for joining me on the show today, James.
Thank you. I love talking about email marketing. It is accessible. The way I like to set it up is I like automated sequences, right? So when I say daily email, for example, we'll talk about that probably. A lot of financial advisors get worried and think, I'm going to have to sit down and write an email every single day. No, absolutely not. That is not the case. There are tons of services out there like Drip, ConvertKit, which is now Kit, MailChimp, Constant Contact, Berserker Mail. One of my mentors actually founded that company. There are so many services that allow you to automate a sequence of emails that go out on a daily basis. So if someone subscribes to your email list, I advocate warm email. So if someone is joining your world, they receive an email immediately, then they receive an email the next day, an email the next day. So once you have that sequence, you are free to go do whatever you want. So I just want to put that out there because a lot of people get intimidated by the whole email marketing process. It is absolutely the antithesis of intimidation, or at least it should be.
Yeah. And I think because we've used in the firm, like we use ConvertKit, I've used MailChimp, things like that in the past. And I've found like what you were saying when I talk to advisors about this, like that's the choke up zone of like, well, how am I going to write something every day? When people are thinking about implementing this into their practices, obviously, you got to make sure everything's compliant and gone through compliance, whatever. But in terms of actually starting it, once you've decided what platform you want to use, how do you recommend people like dip their toe and actually start into getting the emails out there?
Well, it's funny that you mentioned compliance. That's another huge hang up. My approach to email marketing is probably the most compliance friendly in the entire world, or at least the marketing world for financial advisors, simply because I don't like talking about money, investments, or personal finance at all. I like talking about stories, things that have happened to the advisor, things that have happened to prospective clients, just relatable human stories that segue into a call to action, which is usually an appointment. So anything could be an email. And that's kind of advanced. We probably don't have time for that today, but where to start would be with your market. What is important to them? What keeps them up at night? What struggles do they face? What problems are they having? Because let's go to business. It's not just about marketing. It's not about email marketing. It's about business. It's about solving problems for people. So your marketing is like a conduit to get people to that solved problem. But you have to start with the problem. So problem, and then the emails agitate and offer you as a solution and build trust, credibility, and rapport, but you're trying to get to a solution. So you go to your market and figure out what exactly do they want from a financial advisor. That's like the day one starting point, 30,000 foot overview is going to the market.
Yeah. And I guess, for most advisors, that requires a lot more strategic thought into, okay, like making sure you have a client avatar, like what are their common pains? How are you solving those? How are you adding value? And once you've done more of that strategic work, then it's okay, well, how do I translate this into the actual process of the communications that we're having with them? Where do they live? Like, how am I finding people to join the list? Like, am I just geographically centric? Like, am I more niche and I'm more broad? Like, a lot of those really big questions have to be answered first, I guess.
Well, you can also find very specific little grains that can become stories. And I see this in the marketing and copywriting world all the time.
Mm,
One of the people that I know we run in similar circles works in the weight loss niche. So he's writing constantly for these offers for weight loss and women lose weight. And he was talking to someone and she talked about how hurt she was that she was cropped out of her friends' wedding photos. So they have these friends. One
mm,
is thin by society standards, I suppose. I don't know the whole story, but she got cropped out of the wedding photo. And that was one of the most successful, I believe it was an email and online ad, the campaign that he had ever run. That
mm.
comes directly from the market. You can't just sit back and think of this. This is a
Yeah.
real pain point that she talked about. She was probably in tears telling him that is like where you need to go. That's why I'm talking about, like, there's no cookie cutter template. There's
Mhm,
nothing that can be applied with a broad brush that will get fantastic results. You can get mediocre results all day long with the cookie cutter stuff, but you'll never
mhm.
achieve greatness unless you get what you pull from your market.
And it's really, like you were saying, like, it's gotta be really an emotional response in a story, right?
Yes. Yes. It is neuroscientifically, this is not my opinion. It's not my theory. Dr. Gerald Zaltman from Harvard, he has a ton of research on this, or other researchers that have published studies on this. It is legitimately neurologically impossible for people to make decisions without emotion. It cannot happen. Just Google it. And there have been studies where people have had the emotion generating area of their brain either not there through an accident or surgically removed. They cannot decide anything, what shirt
Mm,
to wear, what type of creamer to put in their coffee, anything. They can't choose anything. So unless you have emotion in your marketing, it is actually literally impossible for people to choose to work with you. That's one of, like, it's mind blowing for some financial advisors, but as soon as they eh, insert emotion, it doesn't have to be sadness. It could be anger, disgust, happiness, joy, a revelation, but it has to be some sort of emotion in order to, and this is critical, get people to decide to set an appointment with you in order to solve that problem. Remember, it's like a conduit. So
mhm,
that is what I go back to. Like, that's the purpose of the emotion, because without it, it's necessary to have people set an appointment with you or to decide to do anything for that matter.
Yeah, that's a really good point. So for advisors that are, like, practically trying to field stories like this, how have you recommend them going about capturing these? Like, is it just something where put a tickler at the end of your, like, your meeting agenda, review notes where you're like, was there anything emotionally significant in here that I should pull out? Like, how do you recommend people actually go about trying to find these and implement, the stories?
There are a ton of ways. I think a cheat code that is easy, but may not be the most effective, is just paying attention to what goes viral in your market
Mhm.
online.
Okay.
Recently, in the financial advice space, um, a certification put out, or a board put out these ads. They're just absolutely terrible.
Yeah, they were
So
bad.
if I wanted to, I didn't do this. I missed the boat. I probably should have. I could have mocked that a little bit and talked about that because it went viral, and I could have rode that wave. So if
Mhm.
there's a story about a certain restaurant, people like anything, clothes they like wearing, what is important to them,
Mhm.
that money helps them accomplish. It's not just about the money or personal finance or investing, as I said earlier. It's about the thing that they accomplish. Like, I'll give you a good example. A lot of I talked about this with a newsletter subscriber of mine. A lot of federal government employees, because they have pensions, believe that mainstream financial advice does not apply to them.
Mm.
So the whole marketing shtick, angle, hook there would be, maybe mainstream financial advice doesn't work for you. Here's what you should do instead. Here's a story about someone who thought the same way as you. Here's what that person found. And if you would like to be like that person, then schedule an appointment with me. So you have to, like you said, you're going to put your feelers out there. You will stumble across stuff. And when you do, you should probably just write it down, create a file somewhere. I have tons of stuff all over my computer, tons of different ideas. And that's where I source them. There's really no magic to it.
Yeah, just being sensitive to it and having a place to capture those. Do you find that the advisors have the most success from speaking from client situations in terms of, like, trying to grow a list, or is it more just like anything
No.
that's a powerful emotion?
I'll tell you why. a lot of time, this is a very popular piece of marketing advice. Just listen to the questions that your clients ask you.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. That's good advice. Don't get me wrong. It's good, but it's not great. The reason it's not great is because of survivorship bias. So you are getting the questions from people who have successfully become your clients while ignoring the people who did not become your clients. So you
Mm-hmm.
have to, it's funny when I explain this to financial advisors, like light bulbs go off in their heads. They're like, wait, I've been told to just listen to what my clients are asking. It's like, right. But they're your clients. You're trying to convert people into clients.
Yeah.
Just the survivorship bias. So
Yeah.
you really do have to go to everywhere. I wouldn't say to ignore your clients, because a lot of times they offer valuable insights that you can help in your marketing and just
Mm-hmm.
sculpt and twist and move it however you want. But to really be effective, you want to go to prospective clients in
Yeah. No.
everywhere in the market.
No, that's a great piece of feedback, because I've even noticed that for myself in the kind of content and things, that most of my stories come from prospects, not from clients, because we've
Totally.
solved the problem, right? Like we've solved
Correct.
the problem. And so they don't have the pain anymore of
Yes.
whatever the tax issue is, or what entity should I be, or whatever the question, like, because we've fixed it. So it's not really much for us to talk about other than, yeah, like I was just finishing a return where we saved this advisor like over $50,000 last year from entity work that we did 2 years ago. It's like, that's not really compelling the same way as, like, I had an advisor today who I was talking to where he's wasted $100,000 over the last 3 years because the previous accountant just did not know how to do like certain entity testing work for him, and didn't understand him and like the regulatory requirements that advisors have. And so that's a way more compelling story. Like when I had to drop that bomb on him of, hey, I recalculated your prior returns and like this is how much money was wasted. Like
Mm-hmm.
that's a much more motivating story, and that's going to come from that place of pain. So for advisors who, okay, I've got some good, the financial advice equivalents of weight loss and like the horror stories of people's plans blown up, and maybe the more joyous ascension stories of getting things corrected so that you have a dream outcome for a client. When they go to, and if we have, this might be too broad of a topic for us to hit now, the actual process of converting that information into an email and getting the writing, the cadence, the tone, like, should they be hiring editors? Like, what does that process look like of, okay, I've got this story in my head that the prospect told me, I know it's going to hit. I felt the emotion, like it emotionally impacted me. How do we actually get that into something that's now going to be loaded up to ConvertKit, and then sent off? Like, what's your process that you recommend people go through and what they should be thinking about there? Hey there, Catherine here. Thanks for listening to the conversation. Just wanted to explain a little more about what we do. So, I'm a CPA here with Dominion. We're a tax firm that works specifically for financial advisors as they're growing and scaling their practices to help them avoid tax waste, make the right calls, and grow practices that they love. So, if you're interested in saving more, you can DM me on LinkedIn with the word guide, and I'll send you over our guide for financial advisors to scale tax efficiently. All my top tips to unlock six-figure savings. Thanks, and keep enjoying the show.
I think my answer has changed a little bit over
Mm-hmm.
the years, especially with the advent of artificial intelligence tools like Perplexity, ChatGPT, Claude. I'm sure there's going to be another one,
Mm,
maybe 10 more by the time this is live.
probably.
I think those tools make it easier if you just give the tool a rough draft, meaning you must have the essence. There's no getting around that. I like to say Superman doesn't outsource his superpowers. It just never happens.
Yeah.
I am very anti outsourcing and marketing in the sense that financial advisors are just looking for a shortcut, a quick
Mm,
fix. Even if you read books like Think and Grow Rich by Napoleon Hill, there's the desire of something for nothing. And that
mm,
is a pretty common way for people to go bankrupt and just wreck their entire lives, their businesses and their entire lives. So I think that just do it for me mentality is not just bad business strategy. It's a bad philosophy upon which to hinge your entire life.
mm,
Um, that's kind of deep, I know. But the Chat GPT, I would just say, here's the rough draft. I wrote it. I know it sucks. I'm not a writer. I'm not a marketer. Just clean it up. Please edit the grammar. Please make it read easier, make it flow a little better. And the tools do a great job. In 10 seconds, you can have it done. There's no back and forth. There's no email. So let's just say that ChatGPT is 90% as good as an editor and a professional copywriter and all of the people that you could hire.
Mm-hmm.
Am I willing to accept a 90% result in 10 seconds versus the time and money and energy that I put into a human being that I could then put in elsewhere in my business? So just as a business person, it makes business sense to do it that way. That's what I would do now. My advice years ago would have been just try your best, suck it up, learn it, get close to it, become like the artist part of the art and science of marketing. But now, I mean, truthfully, like AI can just do it for you.
Yeah, no, it does a really good job, and something I've really enjoyed, because I kind of do the 10-80-10 of that first effort of, now that they have the voice to chat function, it's like I will just rattle off a big long
Yep.
thing into my phone and say, "Hey, this is what I'm thinking about. Here's this, that, and the other," and just talk to it like a person, and then say, "Okay, Chat GPT, I need to convert this into," and then give it a description of what I'm looking for an output product. And like you said, like it gets like 80% of the way there. It does a pretty good job. And especially once you tell it cues, like I want it formatted this way so it's more readable. And please don't use, please try to keep it at like a 5th grade reading level, like those kinds of cues to get it to produce the thing the right way. It does a really good job. Like it gets it most of the way there. And then you have to tweak certain things, like especially the hook. Like that is what I've
Mhm.
found where
Yeah.
that one really needs the human touch specifically. But yeah, that's a really great piece of feedback. So
I will throw in one little tactic because you
yeah.
mentioned helps. You mentioned I've been helping financial advisors for a while, and I've seen a bunch. I've had tons of conversations with financial advisors back and forth. I am especially privileged because they show me the real stuff. It's one thing to be in front of a group, and I have
Yeah.
groups now. I didn't used to. I have groups now, but I also have that direct one-on-one. So they show me the real revenue, the real metrics that they wouldn't show in public. And what I've noticed is when it comes to email marketing specifically, a lot of financial advisors really could just push a little more.
Mm,
If you feel like it's going to offend your audience, right at the cusp of that is where you should be. So some of my most successful, when you say hooks, I think an email, I think of like subject lines.
mhm.
So I do stuff that is pretty darn edgy, but it works. So I did like why I think of your mom every night. And it's because I read sales books. I'll explain it. I'll play it.
Yeah.
I'll pay it off. I read sales books at night. And when I apply the sales techniques, I think, would I use this on someone's mother? Like, is it salesy? Is it pushy? Is it aggressive? Would I use it on someone's mother? But the subject line is why I think about your mom every night. And that gets opened, right?
That gets
people are
opened. I'd open
people
that
are opening
email.
that. So, but you could start with that. You could say
Yeah.
like, what is a thing that I could say that would get the open? Because I am not someone who chases open rates, but I'm also not naive to the fact that all else being equal, higher opens equal more success in email marketing.
Mhm.
So a lot of financial advisors send stuff like, I don't know, just weird. I call it not necessarily blind, but they'll say stuff like, what this Yeti cup taught me about personal finance. It's like, no, that's not, it doesn't draw anyone in. It could be like the Yeti cup that almost killed me. It had like, you just take it up a notch. That is like what gets results in email. Some people don't want to hear that. They're like, I would never do the clickbait stuff. It's not clickbait if you pay it off, in my opinion. But
Yeah.
a lot of advisors could benefit from pushing just a little bit more.
Yeah, and I think that that's something that, you know, I totally get that because it comes from a place of like, oh, well, I have a brand and I want to be seen as a authority and I don't want to do anything that's going to come off, um,
Mhm.
cheesy or anything like that. But
Like if I were you trying to write an email about saving people in taxes, some of the subject lines I would do like, did Uncle Sam at least take you out to dinner first? um, stuff like that. Or like, are you sick of buying the government a car every quarter? And with like a gross emoji. So stuff like that, just really push. And
yeah.
that would get opened.
Yeah,
and
no, that's
likely
true.
acted upon.
It's funny though too, like in my industry, I think just because of the niche of who I work with the advisors, like we actually have surprisingly good open rates. And I think part of it is a big part of my strategy is people actually are my audience is looking for technical information that's been
Mhm.
simplified for them, where it's like, hey, this new IRS thing came out. You don't need to read a bunch of stuff. Here's
Yeah.
the 3 sentences you actually need to know out of this whole thing. And like having that kind of approach to it, I've found has worked really well because it's coming from that place of, okay, I'm going to do work for them. Like this is work that I have done. I have digested this. I know what they deal with. So let's translate this into what's the minimum viable thing that they need to invest time into to get a yield of knowledge out of it. And I found that works. Like my open rates are pretty good, like pretty good. But for advisors where you're in a B2C environment, it's a completely different kind of approach, I imagine, just because you're dealing with people where like they it's not a compliance requirement. Like I was just talking to somebody else about this. Like you could procrastinate financial planning basically ad infinitum until it's a
Mhm.
real emergency, and then at that point, it's like you can't even do much for people in that situation anyway. Um, versus with the tax stuff, it's a forced situation. Like you
You
have to
have
deal with
deadlines.
it. Yeah, it's like you don't have an option whether or not you want to deal with the IRS. Like you have to deal with them. Um, so it really changes, I think, a lot of the approach when you realize, like, okay, do they have to do this? And if they don't have to do this, then I'm going to have to do different techniques in order to get that interest and get that buy-in because it's an optional thing. And I'm sure you've seen the same thing with like the colleague that you follow on the weight loss thing. Like weight loss is very similar. It's like it's something that
Mhm.
everybody wants. Like financial wellness is something that everybody wants, but people don't want to put the work into, or they're feel bad about themselves about it, and so they don't do it. And you're dealing with a really emotional situation um, that people can procrastinate themselves into. Like even if they're doing fairly well, like they can procrastinate into that. But so for advisors that, okay, so let's recap a little bit. So stories, super important. Stories from your prospects, really finding stories where there's strong emotion when you're writing your emails, and you have your system that's doing the delivery, but really having the focus be on what are the pain points that my specific avatar is dealing with? What are the stories I can tell around those, good or bad, that'll elicit an emotion? Use a subject line that's right on the edge.
Yeah. Yes.
Run your stuff through your compliance department, etc. Have your call to action. In terms of call to actions, like, do you usually recommend people just, hey, book an appointment with me,
Yep. That's
versus
pretty
like
much
trying
it.
to send resources or stuff like that? Have you found that works best of like, hey, let's just have a 15-minute conversation, get to know you? Like, have you found that works better than let me send you a resource kind of a thing?
Well, you should have already sent them the resource
Mm-hmm.
when they subscribe to your email list. That's typically I like to have a lead magnet that I give away, PDF guide, video, just something that is engaging,
Yeah.
and that works well. I don't like little cheat sheets, checklist. I don't like little guides. I like in-depth lead magnets for a
Yeah.
whole host of psychological reasons. Like the more time
Mm-hmm.
people spend with you, it's not sunk cost. Some people are like, "Oh, he's using dark psychology. It's sunk cost." I was like, "No, it's not necessarily." But lengthy lead magnets work better than skimpy ones. I've seen it again and again and again. But as far as once they're in there, the call to action is usually almost always to set an appointment,
Mm-hmm.
not necessarily a 15-minute get to know you. I guess that could be the context. It depends on the context of your business and what your
Yeah.
goals are.
Mm-hmm.
The optimal strategy would be to sell the thing that people are getting as a result of booking the appointment with you. That you have to be able to create that vision. So I
Mm-hmm.
did research in late 2023 where I surveyed a bunch of investors, people who did not hire financial advisors, people who thought about hiring financial advisors, didn't do it. The number one reason why people did not hire a financial advisor was intimidation.
Mm.
They were just intimidated by the process. And that I use intimidation as an umbrella term to describe they didn't know what to expect. They didn't know the financial advisor's process. Maybe they heard of a friend that had gotten burned in the past somehow. There was some part of the process that they were intimidated by. So
Mm.
you need to sell whatever it is that you're offering in a way that reduces that friction, that reduces that intimidation. One of the best ways to do this, and here's a good takeaway for financial advisors who are listening to this. If you have absolutely no clue where to begin with email marketing, I'm going to tell you where to begin. Sit down, grab a pen and paper, and write down 10 reasons, 10 of the biggest reasons why people would not work with you. I want you to imagine that you met the most skeptical prospect of all time. This person is just nitpicking and finding reasons not to work with you. Maybe it's your account minimum. Maybe the person believes you're not credible. Maybe the person believes that you don't solve that specific problem, whatever, right? Reasons why. So objections in sales speak. Then structure your emails in such a way to handle those objections. For example, one of the most successful emails that I have personally written for advisors was about an advisor himself feeling skeptical about setting an appointment, meaning the advisor in the email was saying, I wanted to set an appointment with this professional. I was hemming and hawing about it. I thought to myself, I don't know if it's really worth it. I don't know how much time is it going to take. Is it going to be valuable? Is it going to be a valuable use of my time? So the advisor had those thoughts, but then the advisor thought, well, I want to just take action. I want to set that appointment. I want to be a mover and shaker, that sort of vibe. That's the feeling of the email. And then it was like, if you would like to do the same, you can set an appointment with me here. So that is a subtle way of handling that objection that worked really well. But I mean, yeah, that would be like the quick and dirty way to get a lot of results with minimum effort, is just handling those objections. And then the segue would be set an appointment with me here. This is what you'll get as a result of having the appointment with me. And it could be like a retirement clarity call. It could be another gift. Like if you have another lead magnet, another book, something they're going to get as a result. It cannot be ephemeral. It cannot be like, oh, you'll feel good about yourself. No, it needs to be a tangible benefit.
Yeah, I love that. And if in the couple minutes that we have left, I would love to hear more of your thoughts and strategy around developing lead magnets, because if
Okay.
that's kind of the kickoff for a lot of this, is like getting people to opt into that lead magnet. And then you go through like the, basically sales objection email content for them based on stories, based on pains, those sorts of
Right.
things. In terms of like what actually goes into the lead magnet and how you structure that, what have you seen advisors succeed with doing the lead magnets, like in terms of the content, et
There's a
cetera?
quote from Abraham Lincoln that goes something like this. If I had 4 hours to chop down a tree, I would spend the first 3 hours sharpening the saw. Sometimes it's 8. I'd spend the first 7, whatever. In terms of email marketing, the majority of your time should be spent developing the lead magnet. When people hear email marketing, they think, oh, I'm going to work on my emails and I'm going to improve my metrics over time and I'm going to run these split tests, and all of that is well and good. But let's think about it from a business perspective. If your lead magnet is really, 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 really good, and you can get leads for, let's just say $5 each, and mine is just okay, and I pay $50 each, extreme example. Well, the economics of your business, assuming we're trying to attract similar prospects, you have a tremendous advantage economically, meaning your return on cash is going to be humongous compared to mine. Your cash flow, your burn rate and advertising is going to be a lot lower. Your cash flow is going to be a lot bigger. Your burn rate is going to be a lot lower. All of the cool accounting metrics are from that particular channel, and your business is going to be a lot better. A lot of marketers are just like, let's get the most response. Let's reach out and do this and do this and do this. I like the economics part of your business. So if you make it really good, meaning if you shop your lead magnet around, like for example, I have a little DVD here. It's an old package called Read This or Die. This is one of the most successful marketing campaigns of all time, by the way. And if I am the guy who wrote it is named Jim Rutz. And I promise you, if Jim shopped this around and he said, hey, what do you think about this? The response he would have gotten is, whoa, where do I get that? Where can I get that? And if you're writing a lead magnet or recording a video, or you have the concept and you shop that around to people in your target market. If they say, "Oh, that sounds really good," or, "Yeah, that sounds interesting." If they say anything but, "When you're finished, send me a copy." Like, they have to be sold on that. And you could just shop that around without even creating the darn thing. You could say,
Yeah.
I'm thinking about writing this little guide about how retirees can XYZ." And you just pay attention to the response. And that is how you do it. Like, it's not hard, but it does take some legwork.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. No, well, and the 7 hours sharpening the saw, right? It's like really invest
Yeah.
the time into it. Well, so many actionable and just really meaty pieces of advice in here that honestly, a lot of it I'm going to take home myself. So it's for people who are interested in connecting with you, James, and getting into your world. What's the best way for them to get into touch?
I would go to theadvisorcoach.com. So THE advisor, so OR and not ER, coach.com. So theadvisorcoach.com. The reason I say that is because it's a little bit like choose your own adventure. You can listen to the podcast, you can check out the newsletter, you can get on my email list, and you can probably deconstruct a lot of this stuff here. And that would be the thing to do. Go to theadvisorcoach.com.
Nice. So wherever you're interacting with this, dear listener, it will be nearby. And I want to thank you again, James, for joining on the show. I really appreciate your willingness to share the real, really get into the weeds on what you've seen worked and, giving that really actionable advice for people. So thanks again for joining me on the show.
Thank you. I appreciate it.